On today's show, the Hawks suffer a narrow loss in Chicago. We get into how it unfolded, what happened to the defense, perhaps, and much more, and it's coming up right now.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2087 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you deep into the night here on a Monday evening into Tuesday. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I also want to encourage you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcast. That includes Apple and Spotify. We are also on YouTube, so please like this video as you're watching it and tell your friends about the podcast. Comments appreciated as well. Ratings, reviews, likes, all that fun stuff. And I appreciate you being here as always. Today's show, we'll be diving into what became a narrow loss in Chicago for the Hawks, 128-123 on this Monday evening. A lot to get to from this one, but the Hawks certainly should have won this one. I think if they had played a little bit better, honestly. They led by 13 points in the first half. And then after blowing that lead, had a 6-point lead again with under 6 minutes to play in the fourth quarter, and then things got away from them down the stretch. They were back to relatively full strength in this game. No injuries to report after 2 games off for illness and injury. Ricochet came back, as did Porzingis, and after Jalen Johnson missed a game on Saturday, he came back as well. Doesn't mean everybody was perfect in this game, but they were more at full strength than they've been to this point in time. And I will say there were some encouraging moments, and it's good to have some guys back, of course, to get reps together, but they're playing in games that do count now. This is not preseason. They are ramping up here, and while I generally like to have a steady hand with the early season results, high or low, quite honestly, this is a game that you probably need to win on the broad spectrum of things. I will also say that some of the reaction I've seen, which is, again, predictable and understandable to some degree, was a bit overboard, I have to say. The Hawks losing a close game on the road to the Bulls is not some crazy result. Like, to be clear, I already said this once, I'll say it again now. The Hawks should have won this game. They did not play well. They shouldn't be happy with the result. No one's saying that. But they were, and yes, they were favored in this game. Our friends at FanDuel, though, had the Hawks as 2.5-point favorites at tip-off. It's not some guaranteed win. It's not some loss like last year they lost to the Wizards. That was a result that was not explainable. This is one of those, like, yeah, you're supposed to win this game. The Hawks should have won this game. But it isn't one to burn the building down about, I don't think. I will also say, again, there's a lot to clean up. And I think particularly defensively right now, that's where I want to start this podcast, because I think that was the reason why they lost this game. At least the number one reason. There's never one reason, honestly, ever. I will try to give you, if you're a new listener, by the way, I will try to give you the entire picture of what happens. And obviously, I can't touch on every single thing in every single game. And that's part of the reason why I encourage you to listen to the show all the time, because I touch on things on one night, maybe not the exact same thing the next night. But certainly, my overall takeaway from this game is that the problem side of the floor for the Hawks was defensively. And look, the offense was not perfect either by any means, but they did enough there to win. They had a 123 defensive rating in this game. That is not all-time bad or anything, but it's definitely bad, allowing more than 1.2 points per possession to a not that impressive Bulls offense. But the biggest issue was the second half defense. The Hawks had a bit of a letdown late in the first half. We'll talk about later on, but they probably kind of, that was one area of the game in which they kind of let things go a little bit. They were still up by 1 at halftime. And in the second half, they allowed 1.42 points per possession in the second half. If you don't know that, that's a terrible number. 71 points, and again, 1.42 points per possession in the second half. They only got 50% of available defensive rebounds in the second half. For reference, league average is like 70% or higher. 50% is terrible. They allowed 74% true shooting to the Bulls in the second half. And part of that was that Chicago was a little bit over their heads from 3. They were 11 of 20 from 3 after halftime. But that's only part of it. That does not explain it all by any means. And just to say this, the Hawks had elite offensive numbers after halftime and still lost the half by 6 points and then the game by 5 points. One more number on the defensive side, big picture, the Hawks allowed 22 points in the last 5.5 minutes or so of this game. And that's how you get beat, generally speaking. One area that's been a problem at times. I would say, especially on opening night, if you listen to that podcast, you will know, if you just watch that game generally, they were really like all-time terrible getting back against Toronto in the opener. It was better against Orlando. It was even better against Oklahoma City, to be honest. But tonight, they allowed 1.69 points per trip in transition. That's a terrible number. Now, the frequency was definitely lower than it was against Toronto, so that's a small win. But when they broke down in that area, they did not do well getting back whatsoever. And it's even more damning that they were able to, I shouldn't say able, when they allowed 22 fast break points while only having 6 turnovers on offense. That means they were getting run on even when they were not turning the ball over, and that is usually an area where you're a little bit worried. I mentioned before the terrible second half defensive rebounding. That's been a consistent problem all year to date. They are only at a 64% defensive rebound rate for the season. That's very bad. Like, that's bottom 5 in the league, kind of bad. And that is an area where I'm a little bit concerned big picture, like beyond today. For example, Porzingis, as tall as he is, and this has been something I've talked about a lot already since the summer when they acquired him, he's a bad rebounder for a center. Like, and that's a well-established thing that he struggles with. That's okay because he does a lot of things well, but that's an area where he's not very good. They don't have Capella anymore. Like, Okongwu is a pretty good rebounder, honestly. That's been, I think, overstated for people that just don't like they don't enjoy that he's not 7 feet tall. Over the last 2 years, he's been a pretty good rebounder. He's not been the problem. It's been everybody but Jalen. By the way, Jalen's even below his norm right now in the class as well. But Riche not getting it done there, the guards, etc. That is a problem that I'm not sure is going to be fixed. Like, it should be better than it's been so far, but they're not projected to be a great rebounding team, and that was definitely on display in this one. The only thing that they kind of did well on defense in this game was have 18 takeaways. But when the Bulls got a shot up in this game, they were able to score effectively, whether they missed it or not. Because when they missed it, they got a lot of putbacks, etc. They ended this game with 15 points on second chances. That's more than you want to allow. Not a disaster, but there were some big ones along the way. And just to say this out loud, the Hawks right now, it's 4 games. I should stress that. It is 4 games. I am not going to overemphasize that. In fact, I want to push back against the narrative that, this is just what the Hawks are going to be forever. I don't believe that. But they have a 118 defensive rating through 4 games. That's a bottom 8, bottom 10 kind of number so far. And I think that the Hawks can be a decent team, even if they do that defensively. But they can't be what they were supposed to be or what they hoped they would be this year. I hope you understand what I'm saying. They could be a 500 level team with that defense, but they cannot be a high 40s, 50 win kind of level team with this defense. So that's where I want to just lay that marker down right now. They have to improve. They all know that. I am very confident in that, but they got to be better defensively, and it's a team thing. I don't think anybody is playing their absolute A+ defensive games. We've seen Dyson flash. He wasn't his 100% best self in this game, I didn't think either. He's their best defender, but up and down the roster, some guys need to get better defensively. That's just the reality. Also, some of this is cohesiveness. I get all that, but they have to be better defensively. That's obvious, but it's also important to point out in this short sample. Offensively, I already said this a little bit earlier on the podcast. It was pretty good on the whole, honestly, by the numbers, by the eye test, all of that. They had a 117 offensive rating in the game. It was 130 in the second half. There were still some individual problems for sure. It wasn't perfect, but they shot the ball well in the game, 50% from the floor. They were okay from 3, not as good as the Bulls, but 34%, not a disaster. 32 assists and 6 turnovers in the game. You're supposed to win when that happens. That's an awesome, awesome set of numbers for the offense. The offensive rebounding was definitely not a huge factor, and that's not good because you want to boost that on the glass. But they scored 66 points in the paint in this game. They had a good profile offensively against a decent enough defense from Chicago. And I say all that, the fundamentals were pretty good. Individually, they basically got nothing from 2 starters. Dyson and Riche combined for 4 points on 13 shots in 54 minutes. That can't happen. And I think everyone knows that, including them. They did get 5 guys scoring 17 points or more in this game. But that was basically it for the offense. So Trae Young was 1 of 10 from 3. Obviously, you want to overcome that. I'll talk about him a lot more later. But even if you say that out loud, that sounds bad, which it was. Trae Young had 17 assists, which is the most assists of any player in any game in the NBA so far this season, and 1 turnover. He produced like 60 points in this game by himself. So, like, aside from Ricochet and Dyson, like individually, there wasn't a lot to pick apart. And that's why I'm saying the offense was not really the problem in this game, even if there was definitely some bad moments. But it wasn't perfect. There's stuff to work on, the cohesiveness there, etc. But for me, long story short, the defense was the problem in this game. It really was. And I think that's mildly concerning / I would say PTSD inducing if you are a Hawks fan, because that's been the case a lot over the last several years. I think this year's personnel is better than it's been defensively, but they haven't played like it just yet for long stretches. And more to come on this in the future, I promise. But in the meantime, that's what kind of held them back in this game, because you cannot allow 1.4 points per trip defensively in a half and expect to win the game. And that, as we saw tonight, that was not quite enough, even with an awesome offense in the second half of this game. All right, more to come in a second after a word from our partners. The NBA is back. There's no better place to get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you actually missed the start of the game or you just want to ride the hot hand in the middle of the game, FanDuel has live bets and everything that can actually, when it comes to who scores next, to comebacks and more. Plus, you can even combine your live bets together if you want to into a single game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. On top of that, they have all the bet types that you actually like or can think of. They have point spreads, they have over-unders, money lines, props, futures, live betting, and so much more. And they have all the sports that you love at FanDuel. NBA is there, NFL, college football, college basketball. They have baseball, hockey, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. Plus, FanDuel is easy to use and fast to pay out when you win. Plus, they keep every single game more exciting at FanDuel, especially when your team is making that late push. And right now, FanDuel is also giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins at FanDuel. So head to FanDuel.com right now to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Basketball is officially here. Nothing beats actually being in the arena for those opening games, or really throughout the entire season. Let's be real, though. Ticket buying can be kind of a headache sometimes, between waiting in queues, surprise fees, the price to jump up actually before tip-off and before checkout even. It's easy to get frustrated sometimes, but all you want to do is cheer on your team in person. But that is where the Game Time app comes in. It's the app that gives you, the fan, the advantage, and it's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free this season. I recently used the Game Time app to help look for some seats for a family friend of mine, and it could not have been any simpler or easier. I found great seats for them in just minutes. At Game Time, I actually love what you see is what you pay with no hidden fees at checkout. Plus, you can see exactly what the view's going to look like from the seats before you actually buy them. They have this in-app seat feature that's just fantastic, honestly. It gives you the perfect view to say, hey, this is what it's going to look like when you get there, and it's true to what you're expecting. There's zone deals as well. Our game changer, you pick the section, and Game Time actually picks the seats for you, and you save big money. And tickets can be found for the NBA for under $25 or less for the NBA. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets right now for the NBA with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That code, when you get there in the Game Time app, is LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. All right, so one of the early storylines in this game was going to be the starters coming back. Obviously, having Jalen, having Porzingis, having Ricochet. They started together. It was the lineup that they saw on Wednesday in the opener, and they only played 9 total minutes in that game. So obviously, a lot of work to do to get the things ironed out for the starters. Porzingis was really active and good early on. He had 10 points in the first 4 minutes for the Hawks. Very aggressive. Had a cutting dunk, had a couple threes. He and Trey had some actions together that were kind of encouraging. And the Hawks were forced turnovers defensively. They had four takeaways in the first 4 minutes. There was an awesome outlet pass from Trey to Ricochet for his only bucket of the game, in retrospect. And Ricochet is always a transition weapon, but that was definitely the case in that spot. Rotationally, I would say there were no big surprises, but also some nuance to get to. So at the first time out, the Hawks had the lead. They went to Okongwu, Alexander Walker, and Kennard together. So the first non-Trey minutes were with 4 guys other than Trey, who were basically the next 4 creators on the team. In some order, it's Dyson, it's Nikhil, it's Kennard, and Jalen Johnson, all playing together. And I think that was encouraging to see that as a game plan. Mo Gay did play in this game. Now, I thought he was going to, but if you remember, Mo got a DNP on Wednesday when everybody was healthy. It wasn't a total lock because of that, but I think the fan base would have rided if he didn't play in this game. He probably could have played more, honestly, but at least he got in there, and I was appreciative of that. The first quarter rotation was pretty much exactly what I would have done. The Hawks had played 9 guys in the first quarter. It was the starters plus Okongwu, Alexander Walker, Kennard, and Mo Gay. For me, that's the top 9 on this team. And then they played Keaton Wallace in the second quarter, which we'll come back to in a second. But that was really my only individual player disagreement. There was some little stuff in the second half that I'll come back to, but that was kind of the broad strokes. The Hawks were up by as many as 13 in the first half. The Bulls did shoot below what they normally would early on, and that definitely regressed all the way back the other way late in this game. But the Hawks were up by 8 at the end of the first quarter. We saw some 2 big alignments early in the second. What I didn't love is that they had that on the floor with Keaton Wallace. So they scored 4 points in the first 3.5 minutes of the second quarter with that lineup of Keaton Wallace and also 2 centers on the court together. The likelihood of that group scoring at an efficient level is not very high. Now, on the other side, you could defend pretty well with that group. I will say that out loud, but I don't love that just archetypal decision. And they scored 9 points in about 5.5 minutes with Keaton on the court in this game. And 2 of those points came on a pick 6 steal by Jalen Johnson. So they scored 7 points in actual offense in 5.5 minutes. They didn't get killed because defensively they were good, but I didn't love the process there. There was a fun play late in the first half where Dyson got a steal in impressive fashion, saved it to Porzingis, who then found Trey in an outlet pass, and Trey had it behind the back to Jalen for a dunk. That's the perfect Hawks kind of play. But also late in the first half, they gave up a big run by Chicago. They scored 2 points in the final 3:30 of the first half, and that helped the Bulls get back within 1 at halftime after being down by, again, double digits. The Hawks only scored 23 points in the second quarter. A lot of that was that Keaton group, but also at the end, the starters were bad as well. So it was kind of equal opportunity. There was their one bad quarter offensively in this game, and it cost them for sure. Early in the third, it was pretty good. There was a nice pass by Trey to Jalen for a bucket. There was a lot of Porzingis for a dunk, but that did not last long. The Hawks had their worst offensive stretch of the game mid-third quarter. They scored 4 points in about 5.5 minutes. They missed some good looks for sure. I will add that, but also had some mistakes and defensively kind of spiraled a little bit. It was a 20-4 overall run by Chicago to go from the Hawks up by 6 to being down by 10, pretty quickly in the third quarter. The Bulls were 7 of 10 from 3 to open the third. That was a big story at that point in time. Offensively, Trey did kind of get things back on the rails late in the third quarter. Trey had 11 points and 6 assists in the third quarter alone in 9 minutes. He was a one-man band in that quarter, but the Hawks allowed 43 points in the third. And only some of that was explained by the three-point shooting by Chicago. There was some bad moments defensively along the way. I was encouraged. I should have said this earlier, but I was encouraged the Hawks did only go to 9 guys after halftime. I might have tried Mo a little bit more than they did, but he did play a little, and there was no Keaton in the second half. The Hawks were losing, and that's you can't go deeper into the bench. I had this moment going into the fourth quarter. I'm like, are they really going to do this right now? And they didn't. They kind of stayed with the guys who got them there, I would say, in a positive way. They did a good job stealing some non-Trey minutes early in the fourth quarter. Trey stayed in to begin the fourth, and they went on an 11-2 run overall to get the lead back. So that worked. That button press by Quinn worked. But then they had to get Trey a breather at some point. Now, they did that for about 2 minutes. There was a sequence where Jalen got a good finish. They got a stop, a Okongwu to 3, and they were up by 6 with 5:50 to play in the game. Best spot they've been in a long time. And there was a timeout by Chicago, and I thought for sure in my head, all right, Trey's coming back in. They weathered the storm with the non-Trey minutes, etc. But then Trey didn't go back in after the timeout, which I just didn't understand in real time. I have evidence of that in Slack and on Twitter, etc. I didn't understand it at all. And then they allowed a 7-0 run in about a minute with Trey on the bench. Now, was it only because Trey was on the bench? No. But it would have been nice to get some better offense in that stretch. And I have to point this out, that was a swing in the game, and I really hated it. And I'm not saying that's the reason why they lost, but that was a big blunder, I thought, to not have Trey come back in there. He sat enough, and Trey played 34 minutes in this game. That's not that many minutes on a non-back-to-back. I know it's early in the season, but that would have been that was a mistake, I thought. I'll fast forward to that from there. It was a tie game still with 3 minutes to go. So they were back in the game. They closed with the keel of Ricochet. That was fine with me. I've talked about this a lot this summer about how I thought that was going to happen a decent amount this year. Obviously, Ricochet is bigger. If really in this game, the decision was probably between, at least for me, between Dyson and Ricochet. I thought Nikhil definitely should close, and he did. The other big decision was the center spot, where I actually thought Okongwu was better than Porzingis and probably should have gone down the stretch. I didn't hate that, but it was at least worth noting that was a decision that they made to go with Porzingis back at the end. But they were down by 5 in the blink of an eye after three by Midas Buzelis. They missed 2 good looks in a row, and then they went empty after the Bulls got a challenge win on who touched the ball last. So suddenly they're done by 5, and they have to get a stop with 2 minutes to go. They got the stop, a great defensive possession. They forced a shot clock violation, actually. And then Jalen scored right away to get back within 3 with 1:25 to go. But here's what the problem is: when you've erased all of your margin for error, Josh Giddey hits a 3 on the other end. And that's a shot that you'll probably give Josh Giddey, but he made it in that spot. And suddenly you're down by 6. Nikhil answered with a corner 3, which is what had to happen at that point in time. And then Trey drew an offensive foul on Vucevic to get the ball back, down 3. So the single biggest possession probably was the next one with the Hawks down 3. They don't have to get a 3 there. They still have plenty of time to score, but they needed to score. Trey had a really good drive, breaks the paint. He finds Dyson cutting, and Dyson tries a reverse layup. He misses it, and that one really hurt, I have to say. They didn't have to foul, but they're down 3 now. You have to get a stop. They get the first shot stop on defense, but then Giddey gets his own rebound, and then they have to foul him, and that basically ends the game. So that little swing and Dyson's offensive issues were definitely hurtful at the end. That was the argument. Maybe you could have played somebody else. I'm not saying Kennard, but it probably would have been Ricochet late, which I don't necessarily love either because he wasn't great either. So they were kind of choosing between, lesser two evils there offensively. But it was an execution problem. I don't think that the process stuff was bad late, honestly. I think even if you go possession by possession, which I'm not going to do, most of the time late, they got a pretty good shot and they just didn't make them. And, I'm not excusing it. You still have to make shots. These are pros. The process stuff matters to me quite a bit, but you got to make shots. And I think that the minute that they they sort of let go of the rope without Trey was painful. The 5 straight points by Chicago with 3 minutes to go was painful. It was a bad turnover by Porzingis in there as well. But they missed some good looks too. So it's a close fought game. And the problem with close fought games is that you're going to lose some of them. And that's the nature of the beast here. That's why that's why point differential and net rating stuff tends to matter in the big picture, is because you don't want to play close games. And maybe you get lucky in close games too. There's teams that do that, but you want to win by 10, not 1 by 2. And it is what it is. All right. I have more to come when it comes to player evaluations on this pod, and there is a lot to get to in that particular area of things. But first, a word from our partners on the show. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow you down, your teams, and they simply do not work together. That's not SaaS, that's SAD, software as a disservice. And that's why you need Rippling. Rippling is a unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace the massive disconnected tools with one system that's actually designed to give clarity to leaders, plus speed and control for those leaders as well. Rippling also removes bottlenecks and busy work that slows teams down. Everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access runs automatically and perfectly in sync. It's seriously simple to use, and it gives companies one source of truth for the people, their data, and everything that they touch across the board. Whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, and finance operations as one, or just fill in the gaps in your software stack, Rippling can do it all for you. And right now, you also get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/lockedonnba. Learn more at Rippling, that's rippling.com/lockedonnba. That's rippling.com/lockedonnba for 6 months free. Today's show is sponsored by Monarch. Let's be honest. Most of us can't even name our financial accounts, let alone what they're actually worth. Between 401ks and savings and investments, it can be easily lose track sometimes, and that can potentially mean leaving money on the table. And that's why I started using Monarch. Monarch is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch has helped me many times with organizing my accounts, tracking my spending, and also getting a better handle on my investments overall without ever having to touch a spreadsheet myself. That's a huge thing for me. It's been very helpful to be able to review everything in the same place with a financial advisor, even with your partner if you want to, seeing shared goals and making better decisions financially in the process. At Monarch, they do the heavy lifting for you, and the visual dashboards and smart tools actually make it so much easier to understand where more money is going, where it already is now, and how to make it work harder for me. Do not let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. You can use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com. The code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right, so the player evaluations in this game, and 10 guys appeared for Atlanta. Everyone that was active played, other than Foy Dante, V. Krejci, and Asa Newell. No huge surprises there for me. Keaton Wallace played 5 minutes, did not score, 2 rebounds and an assist, and a foul for Keaton. I thought he was, just kind of fine. Offensively, didn't really create anything for them. Defensively was fine, but I would not be playing Keaton. I do feel bad. I feel like I'm picking on it a lot, and I don't mean to be. I have praised Keaton. I still would for the help that he gave the Hawks last year, the depth that he gives the Hawks. My disconnect is that he shouldn't be playing with the team is full strength, and that's where they are right now. So that's just my one note on that today. Moge, 10 minutes, 4 points. He was plus 8 in his 10 minutes. Didn't have a rebound, assist, anything like that, but just 4 points in 10 minutes. I thought he looked good defensively. I don't want to call it a problem because it's not. I don't know how you play Mo too much more than this with everybody available, which is always one of the questions. One area maybe is that you could maybe play Jalen at the 3. They don't seem to want to do that, but they could. That's potentially viable. But I was at least glad that Mo played. There should have been no doubt about that. But this is probably going to be the role he's in for a little while when everybody's available. That 9th man, there's time for it, but maybe 10, 15 minutes and not too much more than that. Okongwu was really good, actually, I thought. 18 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, no turnovers for Okongwu. Had a block, was plus 4. He was 6 of 8 on 2s, 2 of 3 on 3s. Did miss all 4 free throws. That's not great, obviously. But beyond that, I thought he played well. And for me, I think he would have probably closed the game for me. There's some politics involved there, I'm sure. But I think that Okongwu was the better center tonight overall for the Hawks. Alexander Walker, 17 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds for him in 30 minutes. 4 of 6 from 3. I thought, Nikhil was minus 13. Not really his fault, I don't think. I think he played well on the whole. And I think he's going to close a lot of games this year. And he did in this game as well. Luke Kennard, 7 points. Didn't miss a shot in the game. Only took 2 from the floor. Made both. 2 at the line as well. 3 rebounds, 2 assists. I still want Luke to be more aggressive, but I thought he was a little bit better with the balance. I think defensively, he's not very good. That's not a huge surprise. I think he was fine, though. They were actually plus 4 in his minutes. And he generally did his job effectively, even if, again, I want him to be more, at some point, more aggressive, hunting his own shots. To the starters, Dyson Daniels had a rough one, honestly. I think defensively, he still made some plays, and I think that he wasn't bad because he's never bad defensively. But there were some moments in the second half they were not his best. And then offensively, it's been really rough for Dyson. If you listen to the show this summer or about his extension, all those things, I am probably higher on the potential of Dyson's offense than most people are, but it's been a rough start for the year. There's not really any, there's obviously nuance to some degree. I've seen people say that he's just bad offensively now. I wouldn't say that after 4 games. That seems pretty crazy to me, but he has been a net negative offensively, for sure this season. Not even close. 2 points and 8 shots tonight. Did have 2 assists, but didn't do a lot of creation. I still think he's in this in-between where adding Alexander Walker is a great thing for the team, obviously. But I think that Dyson just kind of knew where he was going to be offensively more often last year than he has so far this year. I might use him more on the ball in the non-trade minutes, and they haven't done that too much. That's part of the reason why I don't love the Keaton Wallace thing is that Keaton has the ball. I would kind of play Dyson intentionally in that role to have Dyson get some rhythm, for example. He was always more assertive last year with Trey off the court, and that might be a good way to get him started a little bit offensively. But I don't think Dyson is playing well offensively. I don't think he's playing well on the whole for him, even if the defense is still really good. And obviously he'll be better. I think I'm not worried about Dyson at this point in time. I see people that are. I get why you would say that after 4 games, but I think he's just kind of going to have to figure it out, and I'm not going to get crazy low on it, but I think he probably should have closed the game. That's kind of where he was offensively in this game. Ricochet, 2 points, 1 foul, 1 turnover, no rebounds, no assists. But also was plus 13. That's kind of funny. I will say Ricochet is getting guarded, and that helps the rest of the offense, which is important to point out. But I think that he's going to have to be more assertive too. Like we saw in the preseason, there were a couple of like quarters or halves where he was like really genuinely aggressive, and I love to see that from him. It was not the case today. He's got to play more assertively, also rebound more defensively. I don't think he was bad defensively, but certainly wasn't like a huge part of the success, I would say overall. So a mixed results game for him, but I wouldn't panic too much about the 2 points, but he's got to be more assertive, I think. Jalen Johnson, 25 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals for Jalen in 32 minutes. 0-3 from 3, like that's whatever. Offensively, I thought Jalen was fine. He was 11-15 on twos. That's obviously really good. Defensively, I don't think Jalen was good at all in this game. And I think that Jalen was a positive defender last year very clearly. He's had way too many breakdowns for my liking so far this season. Maybe it's that he hasn't played basketball in a long time, because that's true as far as NBA games are concerned after the injury last year. But his impact defensively is not what it needs to be. The way this team is built, like he needs to be good, like capital G good defensively, and he kind of hasn't been so far. He did have 3 steals. Flashes are there, but play in, play out, too many breakdowns for Jalen so far this year. Porzingis, 27 points to lead the team in scoring. Most of that damage was done early on in the game. 2 rebounds for Porzingis in 25 minutes. That's not shocking, because that's a weakness of his, but that was a problem. I thought he was bad defensively, like for large portions of this game. None of these guys are only the problem defensively. It was kind of a collective issue, but I think the front court guys, aside from maybe some of Mo and Okongwu at times, was not great defensively, and that's the problem. Porzingis still, you definitely see the X factor stuff offensively. Like 27 points in 25 minutes is like stuff you can't fake. He's really, really, really talented and good, but defensively got to be better, I think. And then lastly, Trae Young. So Trae had a mixed bag game for sure. On one hand, he was 1 of 10 from 3. That's not going to be good for anybody. In fact, the non-Porzingis starters for the Hawks in this game were 1 of 15 combined from 3. Trae 1 of 10. Dyson didn't take one, which is a problem. He's got to shoot the ball more. Jalen 0 of 3 and Zach 0 of 2. So Trae didn't shoot it well in this game. And I know this is not new to diehard fans, but October is the worst shooting month of Trae's career. That's historically. It's number 1 on the bad side of his month-by-month career shooting splits. November is the second worst. So I say that to say he's a notorious slow starter. And some guys, that just happens. Some guys, you kind of have the same trajectory a lot. Even when Trae had his efficient, like highly efficient seasons, he didn't always start well. In fact, he usually didn't start well. So I'm not saying it's going to suddenly get better. Like, I don't know that it definitely will, but there is something to be said for history being that way. That's one thing. Another thing is that defensively, Trae is not very good. And I think that's something that's very obvious. The Hawks are built around that. They understand his limitations. I think, for example, he was very bad in the Toronto game last week. I don't think he was terrible in this game. Like, he made some plays. He was at least active and participating. Also, if you watch enough of the clips, enough possessions, he's bad sometimes. And that's not a breaking news to anybody that's watching the team a lot. So there's that. But also, he's not the only problem defensively. Like, there's obviously multiple issues. And then you have offensively, like, yes, he didn't shoot well, but he was 50% on twos, which is totally fine. Pretty good for a guard, actually. And then 17 assists and 1 turnover. He was a master manipulator offensively in this game. Like, again, the most assists of any player in the league this year. 1 turnover. I think there's at least 2 or 3 more assists that I can envision in my mind that were not assists because they were missed bunnies. He could have had 20 assists. He was incredible as a passer. So, was Trae great in this game? No, he wasn't. Like, that's his bar is high. It should be high. But I see people like the notion that like Trae was the problem in this game. Like, he shot like crap from 3. Like, that happened for sure. And defensively, he's never going to be the head of a snake. But I don't think he was the problem. I don't think he was anywhere near the top of the list of the problems. Again, offensively, like, the Hawks were good most of the way. He's in charge of that. That's his area to be the domain of. So, not his best game. I don't think anybody on the team, maybe you could say Nikhil or Okongwu, but of the starters for sure, like, I know that 3 guys had 20 points or more. None of those guys, Porzingis, Jalen, or Trae, were like awesome by their standards. Nikhil and Okongwu were pretty good off the bench. but everybody's got to be better. I think defensively, that's kind of where I keep coming back to over and over again. I'm sorry for that, but it was a disappointing game defensively. They do play a team on Wednesday that is probably going to be terrible this season. It's the Brooklyn Nets. They're 0-4. That's the kind of game that if you are healthy and you don't win it, that's one where the alarm bells start going off. Even I will probably come on the podcast if they lose on Wednesday and understand way more some of the reactions I'm seeing. But, the Bulls are competitive. They're not good. I wouldn't want to know what their plan is as an organization right now, but they're not a terrible team. Like, they're going to play hard. They're well coached, etc. So the sky is not falling. I know they're 1-3 and no one wanted that to be the case, but there is still time. I'm not particularly worried about everything right now. Would I project them for a win or two less than I would have 2 weeks ago for the full season? Maybe, because you already started 1-3. That's part of the you don't want to ignore the data entirely. But I also am not gonna I'm not panicking in the way that some might as well. So maybe I'll be wrong about that. That's definitely possible. We will see. But a lot to get to here. Lots of context, lots of stuff that happened in this game. But in the end, a close-fought loss, and one that I'm sure they will leave a pretty poor taste in their mouth as they head to Brooklyn from here. Speaking of which, the game's on Wednesday in Brooklyn. That's the second game of the 4-game road trip. As a PSA, I'll be joining the team for the last 2 games of the trip. I'll be in Indianapolis on Friday and in Cleveland on Sunday. I will not be in Brooklyn, but I'll be covering the game as I always do from home. So please stay tuned for that. Please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. I will do a show on a non-game day once this week. I don't know which day yet, either Tuesday or Thursday, but stay tuned. The best way to find the podcast always is to subscribe to the show, and that way it will arrive to you when the show is dropping. So please check us out there. Also follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me if you want to at BT Rowland. I'm also on Blue Sky at BT Rowland. You can also follow my non-podcast coverage of the Hawks at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody, stay tuned. I appreciate you being here as always, and we'll see you all next time.